Ah, yes. Hello there. You're looking for my monologue? Yeah, you can go ahead and forget that. This story has no monologue. You came to the wrong place. No, seriously, this story is like perfect without one. It stands alone just fine, without any framing device. So enjoy. The Night Shift. The first thing you should know about Barry White is he does not like working nights. He doesn't like working at all. But working at night is worse. His usual schedule was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And even though he hated every minute of it, at least it was familiar. The night shift, however, was something altogether different. And if he didn't make it through the whole shift without losing his mind, he was going to quit immediately. He worked for National Business Machines, which apparently manufactured paper clips because their office seemed to be filled with them. Paperclip art was everywhere, even though they probably didn't make paper clips. They were probably just a front for some other business. Something illegal, maybe human trafficking. That would explain why he was the only staff member allowed in the building after 6 p.m. But it was a nice thought that kept him company as he made his rounds. He was currently in the break room staring into the microwave. It was full of half-eaten lunches from people who clearly did not clean up after themselves. But the way the light reflected off the metal trays inside made it look like a crime scene. And Barry White was not feeling very brave tonight. It had been an uneventful night so far, but the scariest part of his job was between midnight and 3 a.m., when the shadows grew long and eerie. He continued his patrol, checking in on everyone who was sleeping under their desks. Sometimes he found someone new, but usually it was the same 5 people. He never saw anyone leave, but somehow, new victims arrived each night. He couldn't imagine what they were doing here or how they got in. He was the only one with a keycard. He checked the doors, windows, and vents to ensure they were all locked up tight. But that wasn't good enough. They always seemed to find a way in. It was a little after midnight now, and Barry White felt the tension start to build. It began subtly, a low rumble somewhere in the building. Then he heard footsteps, heavy footsteps near the server room. But he knew everyone was supposed to be on their lunch break right now. What if it was one of the people who lived under the desks? Hadn't seen any of them move, but maybe they were more active at night. Maybe they multiplied like cockroaches. Was that possible? Barry White started to feel sweat trickle down his neck. The footsteps got closer. He could hear them now, whoever it was, shuffling around in the server room. He tried to reason with himself. If it was a bug, then why was it making so much noise? If it was an animal, why hadn't it left yet? It was probably just some maintenance worker. They always showed up at the most inconvenient times. But then he heard a crash, followed by maniacal laughter. Barry White ran for his life, darting down the hallway, practically on all fours, making it to the elevator just as someone else stepped inside. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of the person behind him, or rather, the monster. It was tall and gaunt, with a wide grin and eyes that glowed red. It raised its arms as if to beckon him, and Barry White screamed. He pressed the button for the lobby, holding back another scream as the elevator lurched upward. There were sounds again, scratching and shuffling. Was it in the shaft? Did it climb up the stairs? Barry White pushed the button for the top floor again, ignoring the voice in his head telling him to run. Instead, he turned to face his pursuer, ready to fight. When the doors opened, he jumped out and ran into the stairwell, racing up 3 flights of stairs. At the top, he paused to listen. All he could hear was his own breathing. It was clear. He lost whatever was chasing him. It wasn't fast enough to use the stairs. It probably preferred the elevator. He made his way to the roof access door and slipped it open, stepping out onto the cool night air. The wind whipped through the buildings, making the city lights dance below. But the peaceful surroundings weren't enough to calm Barry White's nerves. He still had 3 hours to go. And as the minutes ticked by, he started to feel dread creep up on him. It was the sound again, heavy footsteps on the roof. He turned slowly to face the sound, convinced it would be the last mistake he ever made, but it was nothing. No one was there. Barry White shrugged it off, figuring it was in his head. After all, he was exhausted and hungry. He hadn't eaten since dinner, and his blood sugar was probably low. But then the shadow appeared again. Barry White froze. There it was again, moving closer. He watched as it approached, taking shape in the darkness. He could see its features now. Tall and gaunt, with glowing red eyes and long, sharp claws. It was a monster, and it was coming for him. There was nowhere to hide. He could see the building's edge in the distance. He could jump. But where would he land? Barry White turned away from the edge, bracing for impact. But the monster kept approaching. Finally, it stopped and stared at him. Its head tilted slightly as if curious. Then it spoke. "Hey, are you Barry?" "Yes." "You're awake. I thought you'd be asleep by now." I can't sleep." "Me neither. Want to play a game?" Sure. Let's go down the slide together." Before Barry White could ask any questions, the monster had grabbed him and was running for the slide. In his panic, Barry White forgot to scream until he was already halfway down. When he finally got his voice back, he yelled, "Help me!" which only made the monster laugh harder. By the time they reached the bottom, Barry White's heart was pounding in his chest. He stumbled to his feet, trying to catch his breath, and looked around. Where was he? Where was the monster? Then he realized he was in the children's section of the local playground. The monster was gone, but its words echoed in his head. He had played the game, but who was it? Why had it chosen him? Was it a dream? He rubbed his eyes and looked around. It was empty. Only then did he notice the other things that were out of place. There was a basketball hoop in the corner, a soccer ball resting against the monkey bars, and a pair of roller skates lying on the ground. Barry White suddenly felt cold. He turned and ran. He didn't stop until he was inside his car with the engine running. When he finally looked back, he could see the playground in the distance, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. But it wasn't the playground that made him shiver. It was the figure standing at the top of the slide. He slammed his foot down on the gas pedal and sped away, not daring to look back. And that's how Barry White escaped the night shift. The end.